I've spent enough years watching people and their money to know that most of us are keeping score wrong. We're counting the wrong things. We're measuring wealth the way a child measures success in a game, by who has the biggest pile, who has the shiniest tokens, who can point to the most impressive things and say, those are mine. But there's another way to measure, a quieter way, one that the people who actually stay wealthy seem to understand instinctively. They're not counting what they have. They're counting something most of us never even think to measure. And once you see what they're counting, once you understand this hidden standard, you can't unsee it. Everything about money starts to look different. I'll tell you when I first noticed this. I was younger then, maybe 30 years ago, working in an office building downtown. There were two men I'd see regularly. One drove a Mercedes, always new, always gleaming, expensive suits, gold watch that caught the light when he moved his hand. He'd talk about his investments, his properties, his latest vacation. The other man, he drove a Honda. Same Honda for probably 10 years, wore clothes that fit, but nobody would remember. He didn't talk much about money at all. Most people would look at these two men and think the first one was wealthy and the second one was just getting by. But I learned over time that the opposite was true. The second man had built something real, something lasting. The first man was running on a treadmill, spending everything he earned plus a little more, always needing the next deal to work out, always one setback away from trouble. They looked like they were in different economic universes, but they were measuring different things entirely. The man with the Honda was measuring freedom, not freedom in some abstract philosophical sense, but freedom in the most practical way possible. Freedom to walk away, freedom to say no, freedom to make choices based on what he wanted rather than what he needed. He'd built his life so that money wasn't making his decisions for him. The other man, for all his visible success, didn't have that freedom. He needed to maintain a certain income. He needed deals to close. He needed to keep up appearances because his business depended on it, or at least he thought it did. His wealth was all visible, all external, and it owned him more than he owned it. Most people never think about wealth this way. We're taught from childhood to accumulate. More is better, bigger is better, faster is better. We measure success by addition, by the size of the house, the price of the car, the number on the paycheck, the figure in the retirement account. And these numbers matter. They do. I'm not saying they don't. But they're not measuring what we think they're measuring. $1 million in the bank doesn't tell you anything about freedom. It doesn't tell you whether that person can sleep at night. It doesn't tell you whether they're making choices or having choices made for them by circumstances and obligations and the weight of a lifestyle that requires constant feeding. The hidden standard is this. It's not how much you have. It's how long you could live, how long you could maintain the life you actually want without earning another dollar. That's the real number. That's the number that determines whether you're wealthy in the way that changes how you feel when you wake up in the morning. If you make $200,000 a year but spend $210,000, you're not wealthy. You're in trouble. You just have a high income and expensive problems. You make $50,000 and spend 30% saving and investing the rest. You're building something real. You're buying time. You're buying choices. You're buying the ability to think clearly because desperation isn't clouding your judgment. I've watched people chase visible wealth for decades, and I can tell you where it leads. It leads to bigger houses that cost more to heat and maintain. It leads to cars that require premium gas and expensive insurance. It leads to vacations that need to be photographed and posted because if nobody sees it, what was the point? It leads to renovations and upgrades and keeping pace with neighbors who are also running in place. And underneath all of it, there's this constant hum of anxiety, not the obvious kind, the subtle kind, the kind that lives in your chest and makes you check your account balance more than you'd like to admit, the kind that makes a market downturn feel personal, the kind that makes you sharp with your spouse over money, even though you're supposedly doing well. Visible wealth creates visible expenses, and visible expenses create invisible pressure. And pressure, sustained over years, makes people small. It makes them afraid. It makes them choose safety over meaning, money over time, appearance over substance. The people who measure differently, who count their freedom instead of their possessions, they make different choices from the start. They don't avoid nice things. They're not sitting in dark rooms eating beans to save nickels. But they're skeptical of anything that comes with ongoing obligations. They ask different questions before they buy, Not just can I afford this, but what will this cost me in freedom? A boat isn't just the purchase price, it's the storage, the maintenance, the insurance, the time spent dealing with it, the mental weight of owning something that requires care and attention. A bigger house isn't just a bigger mortgage, it's higher property taxes, more rooms to furnish, more systems to maintain, more space that ends up filled with things you don't use but now have to manage. Every addition to your life, every upgrade, everything you own, it all costs freedom unless you're very careful about what you let in. This way of thinking changes how you invest, if you invest at all. And most people should invest not because it's exciting or because you'll get rich, but because it's the only practical way to turn time worked in the past into freedom in the future. But here's where it gets interesting. When you're chasing visible wealth, investing becomes a performance. You're trying to beat the market. You're comparing yourself to others. You're checking prices daily, reading predictions, feeling smart when you're up and stupid when you're down. You're treating it like a game you need to win. And that mindset, that need to win, to beat some benchmark or impress someone, it makes you do expensive things. You trade too often. You chase whatever's hot. You panic when things fall. You pay taxes and fees, and you give away returns to your own psychology. But when you're measuring freedom, the whole thing calms down. You're not trying to maximize returns in any given year. You're trying to build a machine that produces freedom over decades. You want something simple, something boring, something that works while you're not watching it. You look for businesses that make sense, that do something useful, that have done it for a long time and will probably keep doing it. You buy them when the price seems reasonable, not exciting, just reasonable. And then you wait. You wait through the ups and downs. You wait through the scary headlines. You wait through the moments when something else looks better. You wait because waiting is how freedom compounds every year. That money grows without you touching it. Every year you don't panic or tinker or try to get clever. You're adding to the cushion. You're adding to the number of years you could live without working. You're adding to your ability to make decisions from strength rather than fear. The waiting is hard, not because it's complicated, because it's boring, because every day someone somewhere is supposedly getting rich fast. A coworker who bought some stock you never heard of and it tripled. A friend's brother who's flipping houses. A person online who turned a small account into a fortune trading something you don't understand. When you're measuring freedom, you have to watch all of this and do nothing. You have to be the person with no exciting story at the party. You have to accept that boring wins, but winning slowly feels like not winning at all when everyone around you is talking about their gains. This is the test, not whether you're smart enough to pick the right investments, whether you're patient enough to let time do the work while your ego begs you to do something, anything, to feel like you're participating. I've seen both paths play out hundreds of times. The exciting path, the one where someone gets lucky early, makes a big bet that pays off, starts to believe they've figured something out. They make another bet. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. They adjust their lifestyle upward because the money's coming in. They start spending like the wins will continue. And for a while, maybe they do. But eventually, luck runs out. The market shifts. The trend ends. The thing that worked stops working. And because they've built a life that requires those wins, because they've committed to expenses, based on the good times, they're trapped. They can't walk away. They have to keep swinging, keep betting, keep chasing. And usually over a long enough timeline, the people who have to keep swinging eventually strike out. Meanwhile, the boring ones, the ones who just kept putting money into simple things and waiting, they're still there, still compounding, still free. They didn't get rich in a year, but they got secure in 5 and comfortable in 10 and truly wealthy. Wealthy in the sense of having deep freedom in 15 or 20. And wealthy not because they have the most money, but because they need the least. Because they built a life they can afford with room to spare. Because their monthly expenses are low enough that their investments can cover them with margin for error. Because they can say no to anything that doesn't serve them. That's power. That's the hidden standard paying off. Time becomes the thing you're optimizing for once you understand this. Not money. Time. Every dollar you save and invest is time you're buying back. Time you won't have to work later. Time you can spend however you want. Most people get this backwards. They spend their youth when they have time and energy working constantly to make money. Then they spend their money later in life when they have less energy, trying to buy back time or health or relationships they let atrophy. But if you understand the hidden standard early enough, you realize that the game is to protect time from the beginning, to treat your hours as the scarce resource they are, to recognize that every dollar spent is hours of life you're trading away, not in some depressing way, in a clarifying way. It makes you more intentional. You stop buying things you don't care about. You stop saying yes to commitments that drain you. You stop climbing ladders that lead somewhere you don't want to go. This changes everything about spending. It stops being about whether you can afford something and starts being about whether something is worth what it costs in time. A $40,000 car might be 1 year of work after taxes. Is that car worth a year of your life? Maybe it is. Maybe you drive a lot. Maybe you value it. Maybe it brings genuine utility or joy. But maybe it's not. Maybe a $20,000 car would serve you just as well, and you could have 6 months of your life back. These aren't rhetorical questions. They're real calculations that people measuring freedom make constantly. They're always converting money into time, always asking what they're really trading. The people I've known who've built real lasting wealth, the kind that survives recessions and mistakes and bad luck, they all have this in common. They're not impressed by wealth. They're not trying to look wealthy. They're often invisible. You'd walk past them on the street and never guess. They drive normal cars. They live in normal houses. They don't wear their success. And it's not because they're cheap or afraid or small-minded. It's because they know something most people don't. They know that visible wealth attracts attention, obligations, expectations, requests. It complicates life. It makes you a target. It makes people treat you differently. The truly wealthy learned long ago that the best wealth is private wealth, the kind only you know about, the kind that shows up in your ability to make choices but not in your appearance. That's the wealth that lasts because it doesn't create enemies or dependence or complications. Saying no becomes easier and easier the more freedom you build. No to the investment opportunity your brother-in-law is excited about. No to the job that pays more but costs your peace. No to the house upgrade everyone says you should do. No to the vacation you'd have to finance. No to keeping up. No to proving anything. No becomes your default, and yes becomes special, reserved for things that truly matter. This is the opposite of how most people live. Most people say yes is their default, afraid of missing out, afraid of seeming cheap or scared, afraid of being left behind. And then they wonder why they're exhausted, why they're stressed, why success feels like a burden instead of a relief. I think about the small moments that reveal who has real wealth and who just looks wealthy. It's not the big, obvious things. It's the small reactions. The way someone responds when an unexpected expense comes up. The person with visible wealth but no freedom, they tense up. They have to figure out where the money will come from. They have to shuffle things around. It's a problem. The person with hidden wealth, with freedom, they're calm. It's an inconvenience maybe, but not a crisis. They have margin. They have room for life to be life, messy and unpredictable and more expensive than you planned. That calm, that lack of panic, you can't fake it. It comes from knowing you'll be okay regardless. It comes from years of building something real instead of something visible. The compounding isn't just financial, it's psychological. Every year you live below your means. Every year you save and invest the difference. Every year you don't panic and sell. You're building not just wealth, but confidence. The confidence that you can handle things, that you don't need to win every bet, that you can be patient because you're not desperate, that you can think clearly because your survival doesn't depend on being right. This confidence changes how you see opportunities. When you're desperate, everything looks like an opportunity because you need something to work. When you have freedom, you can be selective. You can wait for the rare thing that's actually good. You can pass on 99 things and take only the one that makes sense. The desperate person has to swing at everything. The free person can wait for their pitch. And over time, waiting for your pitch instead of swinging at everything makes all the difference. There's a paradox in all of this that took me years to understand. The less you need wealth, the easier it is to build. When you need money to solve problems, to impress people, to fill some hole inside you, you make bad decisions. You chase, you force things, you take risks you shouldn't take. You spend money trying to feel successful instead of being successful. But when you don't need wealth, when you're content with enough, when you're measuring freedom instead of appearances, you make better decisions naturally. You're patient, you're selective, you don't panic, you don't chase. And ironically, that's when wealth builds most easily. It's when you stop needing it so desperately that it starts to come. Not because the universe rewards detachment, but because detachment is the mindset that leads to good long-term decisions. I've also learned that this hidden standard, this focus on freedom over appearance, it protects you from yourself. Most financial destruction is self-inflicted. It's not market crashes or bad luck or unforeseen circumstances. It's people buying things they can't afford to impress people they don't like. It's lifestyle inflation. It's keeping up with others who are also pretending. It's making permanent commitments based on temporary income. It's treating your highest earning year like it's your new normal and spending accordingly. The people who measure freedom avoid all of this naturally. They're skeptical of lifestyle upgrades. They don't trust sudden income increases. They know that the more you spend, the more you need to earn, and the more you need to earn, the less free you become. So they keep their spending stable even as their income grows. They let the gap widen, they invest the difference, and they watch their freedom compound while others around them are building golden cages. The older I get, the more I see wealth as a form of energy storage. You work, you produce value, you earn money, and then you have a choice. You can release that energy immediately by spending it, converting it back into goods and experiences and things right away, or you can store it, save it, invest it, let it build. Most people release the energy as fast as they capture it. They work, they earn, they spend, repeat. There's no accumulation, there's no building. They're living paycheck to paycheck even when the paychecks are large because they've scaled their spending to match their earning. The people who understand the hidden standard, they store the energy, they let it accumulate. They invest it in things that generate more energy without requiring their time. And eventually, the stored energy produces enough on its own that they don't need to keep working as hard or at all. Tease what financial freedom actually is. It's stored energy from your past, producing enough energy in the present that you can choose how to spend your time. This isn't about retiring early necessarily, though it might include that. It's about having options, about not being forced, about being able to take a year off if you need to, about being able to switch careers without worrying about the pay cut, about being able to help someone you love without it being a financial crisis, about being able to invest in something you believe in, even if the returns aren't immediate, about being able to make choices based on what's right rather than what pays. These options, these choices, this is what the hidden standard measures, not the dollar amount, the freedom amount. And freedom, real freedom, it changes not just what you do, but who you are. It makes you calmer, more generous, more honest, less afraid. You stop performing, you stop pretending, you become more full of yourself because you're not trying to be whoever you need to be to make the money you need to support the life you've built. So where does this leave you? Maybe you've been measuring wrong. Maybe you've been chasing numbers that don't mean what you thought they meant. Maybe you've been building visible wealth while neglecting hidden wealth, building impressive appearances while sacrificing actual freedom. If so, that's okay. That's normal. That's where most of us start. The question is what you do now that you know there's another way to measure, another game to play, a game where winning looks different, where success is quieter, where wealth is measured by what you don't need rather than what you have. You can start today, not with some dramatic change, not by selling everything or quitting your job or moving to the woods. You start by measuring differently, by asking different questions before you spend, by counting not just your assets, but your freedom, by calculating how long you could live, really live in a way you'd be content with if the money stopped coming in. That number is your real wealth. Everything else is just decoration. And if that number is lower than you'd like, if you realize you're less free than you thought, that's not cause for shame, it's cause for clarity. You can't change what you don't measure. You can't build what you haven't defined. And now you know what to build. Not a bigger pile, not more impressive appearances, but more freedom, more choices, more time that's truly yours. That's the hidden standard. That's what the people who sleep well are counting. And it's available to anyone willing to measure differently, choose differently, wait differently. The question is just whether you'll start, whether you'll stop chasing visible wealth and start building real wealth, whether you'll trade appearance for freedom, speed for patience, more for enough. That choice is always in front of you. The only question is whether you'll make it.